Well, hello everybody, and welcome to the Cooper Naylor Show. This is episode number 2, and so I'm very glad that you're here for this. Of course, last week we talked about my list of presidents from all the way from 45, which was the worst, all the way to number 1, which was the best. So today it's a little something different. As you can see on the screen, we're going to be talking about the NBA in their new TV contract that they signed back in the summer. I know that it's a little bit late for me to start talking about this, but it's starting to really shape up as far as what coverage is going to look like on the new partners, and now that TNT is not going to be a part of the NBA TV contract. Now, the only one that I'm not including is NBA TV itself, like how they're going to distribute that. I don't know if there's really a clear answer yet from what I've been looking at online. So, for now, I may come back on another episode of the Cooper Naylor Show and give you an update on that. But for right now, we're going to talk about the three main partners: ESPN, NBC, and Amazon. So as you can see right here on your screen, and of course, if you're listening to this on any of our any of the podcast streaming audio platforms, such as like Spotify or Apple Podcasts, whatever you may be listening to, you're not going to be able to see this screen right here that I'm showing you. But if you're watching on YouTube, then you actually get a chance to see. So, as far as this TV contract is concerned, between the three partners, the NBA signed a 11-year deal, and this will be worth $76 billion. So the NBA found a way to get $76 billion from ESPN, NBC, and Amazon. Now, some backstory for what these networks are here for. First off, ESPN, they return. So you currently have two partners with your TV contract for the NBA right now. You have ESPN and then you have TNT. TNT TNT got into a bidding war with NBC. NBC won because NBC's got a little bit more money to be able to go spend. Plus, the NBA really liked the idea of NBC with they have a ability to broadcast over the air, because I mean it's an over the air station, while also you got I would say pretty good streaming platform in Peacock where you can distribute that way. So the NBA looked at that and they really liked it. Now the streaming aspect is really coming into play with Amazon with Prime Video. So the NBA, it's very interesting to see the deal that they made. You have, and of course, if you watch this year, ESPN on their Saturday night primetime games that started last Saturday, they're now showing the games on ESPN Plus, ESPN streaming platform. So you can see the NBA starting to realize this is the age of where it's going, is streaming. So that's the three partners right there that signed this 11-year, $76 billion deal. I think, from what I read, I believe it's a increase of about 160%. That's a big increase from the previous TV contract. So let's move on and look at some other details. So first we're going to start out with ESPN itself to show you what they are going to be able to cover with this new TV deal. So they will retain the rights to the NBA Finals. Now this is something that was talked about with NBC getting involved. Would the NBA consider going like the route of the NFL, where the championship round or the championship kind of moves between networks? If the NFL, they're going to be distributing the Super Bowl this year's, which is next Sunday, will be on Fox, and the next year's going to be on NBC, and ABC, and CBS. That's the way they have the rotation set as of now. So there's a lot of talk about could the NBA do that, and quite frankly, to say the least, I think that would have been a better way of doing it, to kind of rotate it and see how that would work. But, it didn't happen that way. Either way, they retain the exclusivity to the NBA Finals. It'll be on ABC for forever, seems like. And then they continue to have exclusivity to all Christmas Day games. So that's 5 games throughout Christmas Day. ESPN will have full rights to them. So what they've done in the past, which this year, they did all 5 games simulcasted between ESPN and ABC. In the past, you may have had the first game of the day on ESPN, and then you have a triple header on ABC, and then the last game on ESPN. Well, not how it was this year. You had all 5 games, ESPN and ABC. So, ESPN continues to be able to show those Christmas Day games, which have always been big for them. So, Christmas Day, ESPN continues to be the exclusive rights holder to that. They get the final day of the regular season. So this is most likely it's a doubleheader. The 2 games that probably mean the most to playoff seeding, or like teams that would get into the play-in to have a chance to get into the playoffs. That's what we're looking at right now with that final day of the regular season. It was really created just a few years ago to bring more excitement to the game. And so, very interesting to see ESPN continues to have the final day of the regular season. They also will continue to have the rights to the NBA draft and the draft lottery. So, this basically means that, if you turn on ABC during the NBA draft, you're going to have the NBA draft. You get to see the draft lottery only on ESPN. So that is an interesting point to put out in there. They get a conference final in 10 of the 11 years. So, some backstory to how this is going to work out. And I don't know exactly when they're going to do the 1 year ESPN doesn't have it, but they will, of course, rotate their conference final, because they got the A package. So they get a conference final in 10 of the 11 years. And then they get the NBA Finals every single year of the contract. The 1 year that they don't have the conference finals, NBC and Amazon will have both of the conference finals. ESPN will not. So that's where you'll see this in a minute, see how this all works out. But as far as how the rotation is going to work, if ESPN would have 2 straight years of having 1 conference final is yet to be seen. Or would NBC be the exclusive home of the Western Conference Finals whenever they had the conference finals, and then Prime Video with their Eastern Conference, whatever, is yet to be seen. That part, we'll just have to wait and see what the NBA does on that front. ESPN will continue to show the All-Star Celebrity Game, which, to be fair, I never understood why they did this, where the Celebrity Game is on ESPN, but then the rest of the All-Star Weekend is continuing to be on only one network. I don't completely understand that. And so, with all this being said, ESPN will broadcast 80 regular season games. So, that's between ESPN and ABC games that they will have. Now, I believe that this is a downscale from their previous contract. So, and a lot of it just has to do with freeing up some space, because I believe it's also part, in fact, of gaining NHL rights, that they're just trying to make a little bit of room here. So, very interesting to see. Then you got NBC. So, NBC, as you know, before ESPN and ABC got rights back in 2003, NBC was your A package. That was mainly, you got to see the Jordan Bulls era. You got to see the Rockets. I believe they had like a two-peat in between the Bulls, three-peats. So NBC, from what I've read, they're going to try to make this very nostalgic with how they're going to broadcast. They're bringing back Round Ball Rock as the theme music for the NBA on NBC. That's going to be interesting. A lot of what they're doing is they're trying to bring back a lot of nostalgic feel from the 90s. So, what's included? They will get an opening night doubleheader. So, this would be, the Tuesday night, which is the first night of the season, which I think is interesting. Opening night doubleheader. I think NBC will definitely enjoy having this. It's basically, to explain, the TNT contract that currently is there is being split between NBC and Prime Video. And then also thrown into that is part of the regular season games that were on ESPN are being thrown into the NBC and Prime Video deals to make all three of these packages that you see. So they also get All-Star Weekend, just like TNT had, just except for the celebrity game, of course. Then they get a conference final in 6 of the 11 years. Again, like I mentioned before, they'll have 1 year where they share the conference finals with Prime Video, and then all the other years they would be sharing it with ESPN with the way that it's set up. MLK Day doubleheader. That was normally a triple header on TNT, but because it is NBC, most likely they're going to do a double header, and that be all for that. And so they're going to broadcast about 100 regular season games. So if you see that, as far as the playoffs, they may not have as many games as if you add it all up, they may not have as many playoff games as Prime Video or ESPN. That's because they're going to have more regular season games than both ESPN and Prime Video. So I think this is an interesting move here for NBC. Clearly they want it back into the NBA. I'm shocked that, and again, I'm just shocked that they're not getting a opportunity to show the finals, just because I think it would have been really cool to see NBC get the finals. Personally speaking, what I think I would have done is say this. Conference finals, if you were to go this route, the conference finals would be NBC and Prime Video. They would rotate. And then ESPN would only show the NBA finals. No conference finals for them. But in the long run, I think they would stand to lose in that contract too, though. So I'm just interested to see that NBC will not have a chance to show the finals. Kind of sad, to be honest. All right. And finally, Amazon, I forgot to update their C package. Either way, so Amazon, their package, they will be able to show a Black Friday game. So most likely, because they have their Black Friday NFL game, most likely what it would be is either before or after the NFL game, they would show an NBA basketball game. I like this because it gives an opportunity to compete with the NFL, which I don't know if they would win that situation, but I do think it's interesting that they're trying to broadcast more. So that's where they're carving out a new portion of the package. The NBA Cup, which was shared between TNT and ESPN, it's now going to be exclusively Amazon as far as it's concerned with the quarterfinals, semifinals, and championship of the NBA Cup. All 6 NBA play-in tournament games are on Amazon. Now, again, just like the NBA Cup, this was created just a few years ago and implemented onto both ESPN and TNT. They had to find a way to split it. With this, now they're saying, okay, Amazon, that's yours. You keep it. That's part of your broadcasting schedule. So they get a conference final in 6 of the 11 years, and then they broadcast 66 regular season games. So, of course, like I said before, with the conference finals, you're going to have 10 of those 11 years, ESPN will have a conference final. 1 year, though, Amazon and NBC will have the conference finals. ESPN will not. So I find this is a very interesting way that they've put this deal together for 11 years. Personally speaking, like I said before, I would have just said NBC, Amazon, you're the exclusive rights holders to both to the conference finals. You just, alternate between years, and then ESPN, you get the finals. That's it. That's what I would have done, but I find that this is very interesting. But I guess what they're trying to show is they're the A package throughout the whole entirety of the deal. They're going to show more basketball than the other two. So, very interesting deal here. And so, now, let's turn to who is going to be calling these games. So, ESPN, I didn't mention them just because they're going to be returning, and there's no point in talking about who they're going to have broadcasting the games on ESPN. You're going to have most likely the same people, except here's an interesting note for ESPN. So if you've been watching ESPN over the past few years, you've seen where they have implemented where they basically distribute shows that they don't produce. So, for instance, the Pat McAfee show is the best example of this. Pat McAfee, basically, he gets to run his show the way he wants to do it. And ESPN, they're just hands off, like, Derek, you do the show, we will broadcast it on our airwaves. That's all we're doing. And we'll pay you to do it, too. As far as how much money the Pat McAfee show got paid to do it, we're not sure. But Inside the NBA, beloved show by most every single NBA fan. And those who don't watch the NBA love the show anyway. Because there's an aspect of comedy that is so entertaining between the four guys on the set that ESPN will now have Inside the NBA. Now, the way it's going to work is, I want to say they got opening week they'll work, and then Christmas Day, and then they'll do the NBA playoffs, I think, and then NBA finals, of course. I believe that's the contract, like the load that the inside guys are going to be doing. But they are bringing the Inside the NBA crew to ESPN. Now, NBA Countdown will continue, however. So that's going to be interesting. What NBA Countdown may look like with this new TV contract, we'll just have to wait and see. And with the Inside the NBA, there's no guarantee that all the guys are going to be there. Shaq and Kenny have signed on, but as of right now, I don't think Ernie Johnson or Charles Barkley have signed on to do the show. So we'll have to wait and see what that looks like. But yeah, so far, NBC and Amazon, they're having to go out and find new commentators. Now, I'll begin with NBC. So they announced that Mike Tirico will be the lead voice of the NBA on NBC. So that makes him one of the most... He's got a lot going on, and it's interesting. Which, if you go back and look at what he said after they made it official, he loves the NBA. So no shocker there that Mike Tirico is back. Is going to be back on the sidelines broadcasting NBA games. Oh, I forgot. I missed one person on Amazon. Either way, I'll tell you who it is in a minute. And then Reggie Miller. So if you know, Reggie Miller has been with TNT since 2005. So it doesn't come as a shock that he is signing on with a new broadcast partner to be able to do NBA games. He will be doing games with NBC, and you could tell a few years ago that he was probably preparing for the day that TNT lost coverage, because he pulled away from doing March Madness, and he was doing solely NBA games. So it doesn't come as a shock that now he will be going to NBC to do the number one game, which I believe from what I heard, Reggie Miller and the next person I'll talk about, Jamal Crawford, are going to trade places depending on the games, working on the number one crew. So NBC so far has only made it official that they're going to have Mike Tirico, Reggie Miller, and Jamal Crawford doing the games. Now, someone that NBC is rumored, well, there's like two people that's within NBC right now that could potentially and most likely be a part of the NBA coverage, and that is Noah Eagle and Maria Taylor. Noah Eagle currently is one of the many play-by-play voices of the Brooklyn Nets TV. So Noah Eagle would be a no-brainer to have as a play-by-play. And then Maria Taylor. She was the host of NBA Countdown on ESPN. That it's interesting because, she left for NBC. Wouldn't be a shocker at all if she has some role, whether it's as the host of NBC's pregame show or if she ends up becoming a sideline reporter for the NBA on NBC, what is yet to be seen. Now, I will mention one more person that works for NBC that I would not be shocked if that gets a job to work in the studio, and that is Jalen Rose. I believe he does some studio work for Big Ten on Peacock basketball games. So don't be shocked if Jalen Rose as well ends up being in some capacity with the NBA on NBC. All right, so Amazon. So lead play-by-play announcer will be Ian Eagle. So Ian Eagle, if you know, he took over for Jim Nantz doing March Madness. He's been doing NBA games forever. He's the lead voice of the Brooklyn Nets. And quite frankly, this doesn't come as a shock to see him get a job. For a long time, networks have been wanting to get Ian Eagle as a number one guy. This isn't a shocker at all that Amazon hired him. I do see that I think Amazon is, as far as the game broadcast itself, I got a feeling like they're going to try to get as many of those TNT people as they can. Now, interesting enough, the sideline reporter on the number one crew is going to be Cassidy Hubbard. She was the number two sideline reporter for the NBA on ESPN. And quite frankly, she got the opportunity now to be a number one, and she jumped at it. She's going to Amazon. Not a shocker here. Also, don't be shocked because Amazon is going to have a portion of WNBA coverage, and I believe she used to contribute to the WNBA. Don't be shocked if she's going to have something to do with WNBA coverage as well for Amazon. And then Taylor Rooks, she is the only one that's on the list right here that was hired by Prime Video to help out with NFL coverage. Most of what she does for the NFL is go get stories with players, sit down, interviewing players. That was mainly what her job is with the NFL and Prime Video for Thursday Night Football. So, doesn't come as a shock. She will be the host of the NBA on Prime Video studio show. She'll be joined by Blake Griffin and Dirk Nowitzki. Now, Blake Griffin is someone I don't think has actually had any time on a studio show like this. So that's going to be interesting to see how he does. Dirk Nowitzki, however, if you remember last season during the NBA playoffs, he filled in for Shaquille O'Neal. So that's going to be interesting to see him. And what they were saying is they wanted to bring in a European voice so that because they're going to have, they're going to be able to distribute worldwide. So they wanted to get a international voice on there to be able to show the games. The one person I haven't mentioned from Amazon, and then just a moment ago I saw something else that's going to be interesting. Amazon, Kevin Harlan will be the number 2 play-by-play voice for NBA on Amazon, which right now he serves as the number 1 for TNT. Clearly Prime Video wanted to go in a different route as far as their number 1 guy, so they hired Ian Eagle, but they still wanted Kevin Harlan because he's a strong play-by-play voice. And quite frankly, if you watch the NBA, I don't know who would sit there and say Kevin Harlan's terrible, because he is incredible. So Kevin Harlan would be going to Amazon. And so just now, I was looking at my phone, Udonis Haslem, who has been working with NBA TV and he's made some appearances on ESPN, he will be going to ESPN. Now, the extent of what he's doing, I'm going to try to see if I can pull this up. Okay, I don't see it as of right now. But I'll pull this up real quick and see what I can get you. But, okay, he's been hired as an NBA analyst in January of 2025. So he'll appear on NBA Today, First Take, Get Up, and SportsCenter. Okay. One thing to keep in mind is, NBA Countdown, I would suspect, would probably go through some changes for ESPN. Keep in mind that ESPN's still trying to figure out if they're going to put put a second analyst with Mike Breen and Doris Burke for that number one job that JJ Redick left that seat. So, depending on who they choose within ESPN, you could see Bob Myers go do full-time game analyst and leave the studio. So Udonis Haslem could be a guy to just slide him in there into Bob Myers' seat on NBA Countdown. That's something to keep in mind. So, with all that being said, with the NBA's now 11-year deal that will begin next NBA season, I do find it as very interesting. And quite frankly, I do think that the NBA is going to be, it's good. I'll say this. I will definitely be watching the NBA at the beginning of the season just to see what the broadcast structure is going to look like. And quite frankly, I'm going to keep my eye on it. But Ernie Johnson and Charles Barkley, if you're an NBA fan, you definitely want to see them sign on to continue inside the NBA, because without Ernie Johnson and Charles Barkley, that show is not that show. You can't just have Shaq and Kenny Smith and then just throw a random host in there and say this is the inside the NBA. You can't do that. You got to have all four guys on there and just them four guys. That's all. So, of course, we'll wait and see what happens with that. Comment below. What do you think about this new TV contract that the NBA has? Let me know if there's something that I missed with all this, and also just comment below as far as who could be considered. Carmelo Anthony's been talking with some of these networks. Dwayne Wade's been talking with some of the networks. Clearly, you would think most of the guys who work on the NBA on TNT have been talking to all these networks. So it's going to be interesting to see how all this works out. Of course, like I said, if there's any updates, I will come on a later podcast episode and give you some updates on what is going on. So, folks, episode 2 of the Cooper Naylor Show, much shorter. And remember, next Sunday, we will be doing a preview for the Super Bowl. However, we're going to have this posting about midday next Sunday. So I would say to look about 3 o'clock or so for when that episode drops, because the Super Bowl begins at 5:30 local time. So look at it about 3 or 4 o'clock East Central Time for just get my prediction on the Super Bowl here on the Cooper Naylor Show. So, folks, I want to thank you so much for tuning in. And quite frankly, it was a great success with episode 1. I think the views are pretty good, and so on YouTube. So, of course, join us next week for the Cooper Naylor Show. We'll see you later.